They were then grouped into 6 daily intake categories, consisting of none, less than 1, 2 to 3, 4 to 5, and more than 5 cups per day. The usual coffee type was instant in 198,062, 44.1%, participants, ground in 82,575, 18.4%, and decaffeinated in 68,416, 15.2%. There were 100,510, 22.4%, non-coffee drinkers who served as the comparator group. Coffee drinkers were compared to non-drinkers for the incidence of arrhythmias, cardiovascular disease and death. It was after adjusting for age, sex, ethnicity, obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, obstructive sleep apnea, smoking status, and tea and alcohol consumption. Outcome information was obtained from medical records and death records. The median follow-up was 12.5 years. A total of 27,809, 6.2%, participants died during follow-up. All types of coffee were linked with a reduction in death from any cause. The greatest risk reduction seen with 2 to 3 cups per day, compared to no coffee drinking. It was associated with a 14%, 27% and 11% lower likelihood of death for decaffeinated, ground, and instant preparations, respectively. Cardiovascular disease was diagnosed in 43,173, 9.6%, participants during follow-up. All coffee subtypes were associated with a reduction in incident cardiovascular disease. Again, the lowest risk was observed with 2 to 3 cups a day, was compared to abstinence from coffee. It was associated with a 6%, 20%, and 9% reduced likelihood of cardiovascular disease for decaffeinated, ground, instant coffee, respectively. An arrhythmia was diagnosed in 30,100, 6.7%, participants during follow-up. Ground and instant coffee, but not decaffeinated, was associated with a reduction in arrhythmias including atrial fibrillation. Compared with non-drinkers, the lowest risks were observed with 4 to 5 cups a day for ground coffee and 2 to 3 cups a day for instant coffee, with 17% and 12% reduced risks, respectively. Professor Kistler said, "Caffeine is the most well-known constituent in coffee, but the beverage contains more than 100 biologically active components. It is likely that the non-caffeinated compounds were responsible for the positive relationships observed between coffee drinking, cardiovascular disease and survival. Our findings indicate that drinking modest amounts of coffee of all types should not be discouraged but can be enjoyed as a healthy behavior. Our study is the first to look at differences in coffee subtypes to tease out important differences, which may explain some of the mechanisms through which coffee works." Peter M. Kistler, MD. Daily coffee intake should not be discouraged by physicians but rather considered part of a healthy diet, Kistler said. This study supports that coffee is safe and even potentially beneficial, which is consistent with most of the prior evidence, says Carl. This study supports that coffee is safe and even potentially beneficial, which is consistent with most of the prior evidence, Levy, MD. Prescription. We do not prescribe coffee to patients, but for the majority who like coffee, they can be encouraged. It is fine to take a few cups daily, said Levy. He is associated with the Ochsner Heart and Vascular Institute in New Orleans, Louisiana. The study was published online today in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology. Clear cardiovascular benefits. A total of 449,563 UK Biobank participants, median age 58 years, 55% women, who were free of arrhythmias or other CVD at baseline, reported their level of daily coffee intake and preferred type of coffee on questionnaires. During more than 12.5 years of follow-up, 27,809, 6.2%, of participants died. Drinking 1 to 5 cups per day of ground or instant coffee, but not decaffeinated coffee, was associated with a significant reduction in incident arrhythmia. The lowest risk was with 4 to 5 cups per day for ground coffee, hazard ratio, HR, 0.83, 95% C, 0.76 to 0.91, P less than 0.0001, and 2 to 3 cups per day for instant coffee, HR, 0.88, 95% C, 0.85 to 0.92, P less than 0.0001. Habitual coffee drinking of up to 5 cups per day was also associated with significant reductions in the risk of incident CVD, when compared with non-drinkers. Significant reductions in the risk of incident coronary heart disease, CHD, were associated with habitual coffee intake of up to 5 cups per day, with the lowest risk for CHD observed in those who consume 2 to 3 cups per day, HR 0.89, 95% C, 0.86 to 0.91, P less than 0.0001. Coffee consumption at all levels was associated with significant reduction in the risk of congestive cardiac failure, CCF, and ischemic stroke. The lowest risks were observed in those who consume 2 to 3 cups per day, with HR, 0.83, 95% C, 0.79 to 0.87, P less than 0.0001, for CCF and HR, 0.84, 95% C, 0.78 to 0.90, P less than 0.0001, for ischemic stroke. Death from any cause was significantly reduced for all coffee subtypes, with the greatest risk reduction seen with 2 to 3 cups per day for decaffeinated, HR, 0.86, 95% C, 0.81 to 0.91, P less than 0.0001. Ground, HR, 0.73, 95% C, 0.69 to 0.78, P less than 0.0001. And instant coffee, HR, 0.89, 95% C, 0.86 to 0.93, P less than 0.0001. Coffee consumption is associated with cardiovascular benefits and should not empirically be discontinued in those with underlying heart rhythm disorders or cardiovascular disease, Kistler told. Plausible mechanisms. There are a number of proposed mechanisms to explain the benefits of coffee on CVD. Caffeine has antiarrhythmic properties through adenosine A1 and A2A receptor inhibition. Hence the difference in effects of decaf versus full-strength coffee on heart rhythm disorders, Kistler explained. Vasodilation. Coffee also has vasodilatory effects, and coffee also contains antioxidant polyphenols, which reduce oxidative stress and modulate metabolism. The explanation for improved survival with habitual coffee consumption remains unclear, Kistler said. Putative mechanisms include improved endothelial function, circulating antioxidants, improved insulin sensitivity, and reduced inflammation. Another potential mechanism includes the beneficial effects of coffee on metabolic syndrome, he said. Caffeine has a role in weight loss through inhibition of gut fatty acid absorption and increase in basal metabolic rate. Furthermore, coffee has been associated with a significantly lower incidence of type 2 diabetes mellitus, Kistler added. Direction of relationship unclear. Charlotte Mills, Ph.D., University of Reading, United Kingdom, said this study adds to the body of evidence from observational trials associating moderate coffee consumption with cardioprotection, which looks promising. However, with the observational design, it's unclear which direction the relationship goes. For example, does coffee make you healthy, or do inherently healthier people consume coffee? Randomized controlled trials are needed to fully understand the relationship between coffee and health before recommendations can be made, Mills told the UK non-profit Science Media Centre. Annette Creighton, Ph.D., nutrition scientist with the British Nutrition Foundation, said it's possible that respondents over or underestimated the amount of coffee that they were consuming at the start of the study when they self-reported their intake. It is therefore difficult to determine whether the outcomes can be directly associated with the behaviors in coffee consumption reported at the start of the study, she told the Science Media Centre.